Welcome to the Feel Your Best Formula podcast. Are you over 40 and tired of struggling with your weight, dieting, and constantly feeling like you're starting over with nutrition and fitness? Do you wish you had more energy? Do you want to lose weight and finally keep it off for good? I'm Lil, a certified nutrition coach and former registered nurse. I too have been there, and at the age of 44, I decided I was done with fad diets and chasing a lower number on the scale. I was so tired of constantly starting over and wondering why I couldn't get lasting results. I became a nutrition coach and created the Feel Your Best formula for women who want to build muscle, lose fat, and keep it off for good. If you're ready to build a better relationship with food, the scale, and your body, let's build your formula for feeling your best. If you're new here, make sure to check the episode details for the link to my newbie starter guide. You'll receive an email straight to your inbox with everything you need to start building your Feel Your Best formula. I'm so glad you're here. Now let's dive into today's episode. Hello, good morning. Welcome to the Feel Your Best Formula podcast. I am Lil, and I am so excited to be talking to you about the beginner's trap today. Honestly, I hear people out there in social media land talking about certain aspects of what I like to call the beginner's trap, but I don't really see people diving into the fact that this is a huge issue for women. And it's probably, in my mind, the biggest reason why so many of you give up on building these habits and making them long term. And it really stands in the way of building a plan that works for you, that you can truly commit to for the long term, because it's a trap. That's exactly what it is. And it's not your fault if you're stuck there. But what we're going to do on today's podcast is first just talk about the characteristics of what I have termed the beginner's trap. We're going to talk about how you got there, why it's so tempting to stay there. And then I'm just going to share the very first step that you can take to break free and actually start moving in the direction that will get you where you want to go. As always, I'm reminding you that there is so much nuance and individual experience based on your genetics, environment, and commitment to your goals. So I cannot speak to your exact situation, but I can speak in general terms here. And I know it's going to be so helpful for you. I know that many aspects of the beginner's trap are so ingrained of what we think we know about fitness, nutrition, and weight loss specifically. So if you feel yourself resisting what I'm telling you here and thinking I'm nuts for what I'm saying, I encourage you to have an open mind. And you might just find yourself saying, oh my gosh, that is me. That is, where I keep going back to. This is why I keep getting stuck. So listen with an open mind and understand that breaking free from the beginner's trap is going to change everything for you. All right, so let's dive in. What exactly is this phase of the diet cycle called the beginner's trap? Well, quite frankly, it's what happens when you start a new fitness and nutrition plan. You get great results in the beginning. You lose weight, you get stronger, you have more energy, and then you keep doing what you're doing over time, and suddenly those results stall out. The scale stops moving. You find it harder and harder to stick to that plan. You think that there's something wrong with you. I mean, you were losing weight, you were looking more toned, you were feeling great, and then bam, suddenly it just felt really hard, and you're trying to follow the plan, but it just isn't working for you anymore. and you feel stuck. And this is where you can get tempted to do things like cleanses, shreds, 30-day challenges, all these special little diet culture things that are created to help you, quote, get back on track. And you enter this cycle of dieting, working out, falling off the wagon, and then trying to get back on track. Bottom line, you are stuck in this loop. And maybe you're just kind of stuck in this little like 5 to 10 pound loop where you just like can't seem to maintain that goal weight. I mean, we talk about goal weight on here all the time and how silly goal weights are, but you get really excited because you hit that goal weight and then some weight comes back on. Or you could swing wider where it could be 20, 30, 40 pounds that you find yourself stuck in this loop with. And the worst part is that you feel like you're doing so many things, quote unquote, right. You're restricting your food, you're dieting, you're eating low calorie, you're following whatever plan it is that you're trying to follow. Most likely there's like approved, unapproved foods lists. You're working out, you're burning a lot of calories, but the scale is getting stuck. It's not moving. You're frustrated and it's not a good feeling, especially because you feel like you're working so hard and you're doing so many things right and you're really sacrificing and still you're getting nowhere. And this thought that you keep having, that you keep going back to, and the reason you keep going back to those same things that you did in the beginning is because you say, it worked for me when I got started, so why isn't it working for me anymore, right? You lost weight, you got more fit, but then you're stuck where you are. But you keep trying to go back and do exactly what you did when you got started. This is the beginner's trap, and it sucks. I know, I've been there. And do you know what I hate most about it? I hate that feeling that something is wrong with you. I think this feeling is really strong if you're in a community with other people doing the same thing and you can see other people, especially other new people, getting results and like being so excited and sharing their results. And then you're kind of embarrassed and you don't want to admit, like, hey, I got my hand raised over here. It isn't really working for me, because we're nervous to admit that maybe we're the problem. Maybe we're not doing things right. And honestly, maybe you got to a point where you realize you just couldn't eat low calorie anymore. And we're going to talk about that. But there's sort of this sense of shame. And especially if you're in a community of all these other people doing the same thing and other people are telling you, this is it, this is the solution, this works great. And if it isn't working for you, it's because you're doing it wrong, right? Now, don't get me wrong. There could be something going on medically with you. It is possible you could have a thyroid issue or some other medical issue. But it is really important, if you suspect that is what's going on, that you seek the advice of an endocrinologist, a physician, and not a fitness and nutrition professional, right? This is entirely outside our scope of practice, and any legitimate ethical fitness professional will refer you to a medical professional and not try to balance your hormones or fix your thyroid through diet and exercise. Because while all these things are interconnected, you need to have those issues tackled by a physician who is trained specifically in endocrinology or what have you. You might be told there's something wrong with your gut and that's why you're not losing weight. Again, mostly nonsense, but you need to go to the proper medical provider for help with those things. But if you are trying to follow the plan, there's no underlying issues, and it's just simply the fact that you are stuck in this awful beginner's trap, which is a tough place to be. All right, so let's just review. What does it look like? Number one, you've started a new fitness and nutrition plan and got results, and you got them pretty easily at first. I will also say where you're coming from as a beginner. Like if you're someone who has not run a mile since PE in 11th or 12th grade, and now you're finally starting to work out 20 years later, then you're actually most likely going to see better results than someone who's kind of been all in and all out, but kind of has an underlying level of athleticism or, endurance, some strength and stuff like that. So, sort of the worse off, I mean, I'm probably not saying this right. I'm not saying it to offend anyone, but kind of like the more extreme way that you get started, the less trained, the more sedentary you've been, once you start doing things, you're going to get results. Like you're going to get results. If you just start moving more or you just start eating a little bit more healthier with more whole foods and cutting out high calorie, calorie dense foods, high fat foods, things like that, high sugar content foods, you're going to get results pretty easily. Then what happens is over time, you start to feel it get harder and you notice that you're not getting those rapid results that you got in the beginning. And it also feels harder to stick to the plan because in the beginning, you're like really motivated and you're like, I'm going to do this thing. And over time, especially the more restrictive and the more extreme the plan is that you're doing, you're going to run out of willpower. It's not going to be so exciting anymore. And it's going to be harder and harder to stick to it. And then what happens? You feel frustrated because you're putting in all this effort. You feel like you're working hard and you're not seeing the results like you saw in the beginning. And then this has you doubting yourself and feeling bad about yourself. And you may choose to respond in a couple ways. And this response is where we see, I personally feel, the biggest issue with the issue that we have in our society with people being overweight, being sedentary, and not having the healthy habits that we really need to have. It's because you get to this point where you're so frustrated and you feel like this is just not worth it. It's hard. So you either throw in the towel, say, forget it. This is just too hard. It's not for me. It's not worth it. Or you just kind of stop where you are and say, I'm just going to get back on track again. So you might give up completely, or you might just take a pause and then you're like, okay, I'll go back and do all those things again when I'm not so exhausted from it. And I'll get back on track. So maybe there's holidays coming or vacation coming and you just kind of get this idea of like a new start date. You're going to have a new day one, okay? Or you can really go to the extreme here and you say, all right, I'm going to do it, but I'm just going to do it harder. I'm going to eat less calories. I'm going to work out more. I'm going to do more cardio. I'm going to put more effort in. And you really just burn yourself out trying to diet and exercise your way out of this plateau. You might switch things around. This is also a time when you might get tempted. Say you start off doing intermittent fasting and then you're like, okay, I haven't tried keto yet. Let me try keto. Let me try Whole30. And you might bounce around again, looking for that magic thing that is magically going to make this easier for you, right? So that's a typical response. I'm sure there's more, but I would say that is the top 3 things that I have seen the most. So maybe some of this, you're listening to me, you're going, okay, yeah, I've been there. All right, does any of this sound familiar? Honestly, just talking about it, talking to you right now, it brings me right back to where I was about 5 years ago. And what it brings up for me when I think about when I was in that place, it is that feeling of something being wrong with me. And, I don't have enough willpower. I can't control myself around food. And the fact that I do want to eat things with ice cream, like you can't be a healthy person and also want to eat those things. And all this feeling of shame and guilt because I could not stick to these approved foods 365 days a year. And it's just this really weird feeling where in your head it's okay to eat ice cream, but in the back of your head there's like this shameful voice saying to you, oh, this, you should be someone that doesn't even desire this, and you would be a better person, and there's a morality placed on it that the better person would not eat the ice cream. The better person would just not have anything because they're not tempted. And it's such a mental game, and it's so detrimental to your overall mental health. So let's talk about why this happens. So I'm going to highlight a few main aspects of the beginner's advantage when it comes to fitness and nutrition, because the truth is, if you are a beginner, then you're going to experience results much differently than someone who's been training for 6 months, 12 months, or longer. Being a beginner can be a very special and awesome time in your journey, but if you don't adjust your habits and plan after this beginner phase, that's where you're going to get stuck and trapped. So here we go. Some unique advantages to being a beginner. Number one, rapid adaptation. Beginners tend to experience quicker physiological adaptations to exercise and dietary changes. Like I said, their bodies are not accustomed to the stressors of physical activity or dietary modifications, leading to faster improvements in strength, endurance, and metabolism. Okay? Also, you have a greater potential for muscle gain. Novices often experience significant muscle growth in the initial stages of training, commonly referred to as quote, beginner gains. This is due to a combination of factors, including neuromuscular adaptations, increased protein synthesis, and heightened responsiveness to resistance training stimulus. Okay. Additionally, your body's going to be more sensitive to insulin, and starting a nutrition and fitness program can enhance insulin sensitivity, especially if you were very sedentary prior to starting your new habits, or if you ate really poorly. This can lead to better blood sugar control, reduced risk of insulin resistance, and improved energy utilization. Movement is what your body craves. That's basically what we're saying here with improved insulin sensitivity. Your body wants to move. So please give it that gift. Being sedentary just creates all these negative ripple effects. And as a beginner, people always worry about losing weight. You are doing so many amazing things for your body as a beginner. And all of these things that I'm listing here, that's your body's gift to you, saying, thank you for moving more. Thank you for feeding me the foods that are going to nourish my body. It's like a gift. And if you have not worked out in a long time, then you get to reap the benefits of this. Plus, I also want to add in here the mental and emotional benefits. Starting a new fitness and nutrition journey can boost your mood, your confidence, and your self-esteem. You're just going to feel better about yourself, and you're getting that gift of making quick, easy progress in the beginning. And the sense of accomplishment from starting to become this person that you want to be can be so wonderful for not only your physical health, but your mental health. And it can be really easy to stay motivated when you're in this beginning phase, when every time you step on the scale, it really feels like it's going down, and you feel yourself getting stronger and you just feel better. You feel like this weight is lifting, right? But the longer you do it, the harder it gets. And eventually, you are no longer having that beginner adaptation, and you are becoming someone whose body is adjusting to moving more, strength training, and being nourished. And unfortunately, things are going to get a little bit harder. And the other thing you need to understand here is you can be doing a lot of things wrong as a beginner, and you're still gonna get really good results. Like, you're still gonna gain muscle, you're still gonna lose fat, you're still gonna feel better, even if you're doing things that to me sound so wacky and off the wall, like really cutting your calories and over exercising and stuff like that. You're still going to get results even if you're doing things that are not sustainable and just not really great for you in the long term. You can eat in a calorie deficit and simultaneously build muscle and lose fat. Like, how cool is that, right? And you can do pretty much any type of workout and get stronger. You could do cardio dumbbell workouts. And yes, you're going to get stronger because you're a beginner. And listen, if you go from 0 to 60, your body's going to respond in a positive way. Your body is meant to move and be active and lift heavy things. It's going to say, oh, you're asking more of me. Let me make it easier. Like maybe your body thinks you're in some sort of special situation where it's kind of like fight or flight a little bit. Your body wants to be ready to fight and do what's needed, but it's not going to keep you in that spot with those beginner benefits, right? Because your body just can't sustain that. If the program you're following doesn't teach you that you need to do things differently as you become more advanced, then you can get stuck continuing to do what you did when you started and got results because you're like, I got results, I should go back to that. But in actuality, these are the negative things that are happening because you're prolonging what you were doing in the beginning. Number one, we've talked about this metabolic adaptation. If you are able to stick to a low calorie plan for months and months on end, and I'm assuming you don't have a large amount of excess body fat. If you have a lot of excess body fat, then it is easier to eat in a calorie deficit for longer and not enter metabolic adaptation because your body has a lot of extra energy stored, right? I have been there and ended up in metabolic adaptation where I just kept dieting and dieting and dieting. And basically, your body slows down your metabolism because you're starving yourself. And again, this is individualized and nuanced, but here's an example. If you're 5'5" and 160 pounds and trying to lose 20 pounds by eating 1,500 calories per day, then this is anywhere from 500 to 1,000 calories less per day than your body needs based on your activity levels. So your body's going to lose weight at first, and that weight loss is going to include muscle, fat, water weight, etc. But it's going to get to a point where it says, hold up, you're starving me. So I'm going to slow down all these different metabolic functions in the body and try not to burn through my energy stores. And this is just something that your body does as a way to survive times like famines when there is not a lot of food available. And human beings, part of the reason we have survived as a species is our bodies are really, really good at this. It's only been probably the last, 150 years where food was in abundance in the way that it is now. It used to be pretty common for human beings to go through, in the winter, not having an abundance of food. And that's how human beings have been able to survive. All right, so metabolic adaptation happens because you're not eating enough calories for a prolonged amount of time, and you're not eating enough calories because in the beginning, not eating enough calories really worked for you and you got great results, so you think that's why you need to keep doing it, right? Okay. What else happens is you get stuck in this restrict binge cycle, and this is a big one, and I think this is a much easier place to get stuck because metabolic adaptation, the willpower that it takes to keep eating low calorie when your body's literally starving, that's really hard to do. And I have done both. I've spent more time in the restrict binge cycle. I spent less time where my body went into metabolic adaptation, and that was more of a mental health thing for me where, I was eating low calorie. And then eventually I got to a point where then I entered the restrict binge cycle. So let's be honest, most people cannot take the hunger levels that comes with constant, very low calorie dieting. So what you do is you might feel like you're only eating 1,500 calories per day, but unless you're tracking every bite and you're really, making sure that that's what you're doing, the truth is your body is screaming for food. So you're going to do things like take extra bites, take bites of your kids' foods, or blatantly just go and eat a bunch of food at once, which you might consider overeating or a binge. And this isn't the same as having a binge eating disorder where someone is able to consume massive amounts of food and not really make a dent in their hunger. A restrict binge cycle is basically a natural response to being deprived. So if you're sitting there beating yourself up, I'm disgusting, I binge, I overeat, hold up, let's talk about this, all right? So number one, have you ever had an extremely physically active day, like a long day of hiking, or another thing that pops in my mind, have you ever, moved a day of moving, literally, your home or or out of an apartment or something? These are specific things that come to my mind where you're very, very active and you don't really have time to eat when you're doing those things. And often after a long day of hiking or a long day of doing something like moving, you'll eat a really large meal afterwards because you're like, oh my God, I'm so starving because I've been so busy all day and I've barely eaten. Well, when you do things like that, you think to yourself, well, this is normal that I'm eating like 4 slices of pizza, right? Because I didn't eat enough today and I was moving a lot. And if you compare the fact that when you get stuck in a restrict binge cycle, you're essentially doing that to yourself without this idea of, oh, I was doing something that earned me this large meal. Because when you do something very physically active, like maybe you've run a race, done a half marathon or something, you probably went and got like a burger and fries and a milkshake afterwards. I'm just guessing here, but you probably got yourself a really big meal afterwards and you were like, oh my God, I know that my body needs this. So you don't feel guilty about it. But the problem is when you're doing that same thing to your body where you're not getting enough calories based on the activity level that you're moving your body on a daily basis, and your body wants to do that same thing. It's going to say, give me 4 slices of pizza. It's going to say, give me a burger and fries and a milkshake because I need it. But instead, because you're doing this because your intention is to diet and lose weight, you feel like there's something wrong with you, right? But your body is hungry, right? So when you're in that situation because you feel that you've earned the right to eat the big meal, you don't view it as binging or overeating. But when your body ends up in that place because you've been dieting, you are these thoughts of, I'm disgusting, I have no willpower, I'm so ashamed of myself, I am guilty for eating this food. But guess what? Your body doesn't know the difference, right? It is just hungry and it wants some freaking food. That is what is happening. So please don't feel guilty about this type of behavior. When this behavior is brought on because you're basically starving yourself, it is a normal response, right? Your body is trying to keep you alive. It's saying, feed me, feed me. And continuing to ignore those hunger cues and signals, that's when you can really get in danger of disordered eating and creating hormonal problems, right? So instead of blaming ourselves and thinking we're the disgusting ones, we're the bad ones, let's put the blame where it lies. The blame lies with this restrictive diet that you're trying to follow. You're following it for too long. It is way too little calories, and it's going to lead you into a very, very dark place. All right. So let's review. The beginner's trap is tempting because you get results as a beginner that you cannot get once you've been training for a while. And again, that's going to depend on the individual, how long that is. Typically, we don't recommend dieting. Anyone who is being an ethical nutrition coach is not going to recommend that you diet more than 8 to 12, maybe 16 weeks straight, okay? And while you can get those beginner results very haphazardly by doing things that just aren't really that great, that you really don't want to continue to do for the long term, the longer you've been training, the more specific of a plan you're going to need if you want to continue working towards your goals. This doesn't mean that it needs to be complicated at all. It's actually pretty simple, right? You just need to build your formula for feeling your best. That's what it's all about. That's what I do. And it's got to include eating right, nourishing your body, strength training in an effective way, and focusing on supportive habits that's going to make that fitness and nutrition easier for you, which includes sleep, activity level, alcohol, all those things we talk about here on the podcast. However, when we're struggling and stuck in the beginner's trap, it's often so tempting to do more complicated and restrictive things. Like I said, doing a cleanse, doing a detox, joining a 6-week shred program to, quote, break free from that plateau. I'm making up words here. The truth is, you just need to focus on what matters and learn that you need to do things a bit differently once you are no longer a beginner. And if you keep going back to the diet and workout plan that you did as a beginner that you think was like, oh, this is the thing that really worked for me. A lot of times when I'm first meeting with a client, I'll kind of ask, what's your background? And they'll be like, oh, I did Whole30 and that worked so well for me. I got awesome results from it. And then I just have to kind of gently say, well, but you weren't able to continue with it, So it didn't really work for you. It got you temporary results, but it's not something that obviously you can sustain for the long term. And it's so tempting to keep going back and thinking, oh, this thing worked for me. That thing worked for me. Well, no, it didn't. Because if you were only able to feel good about yourself for a short amount of time while you were doing it, then it really did not work. So how do we break free? Well, first of all, you need to realize that you must eat enough calories and protein to build muscle. Okay? And if you continue dieting and eating low calorie, you're going to stay stuck in this loop. You're going to be burning off muscle. I'm sorry, your body's starving. It's going to look for calories wherever it can get it. So you need to be eating adequate protein and you need to be nourishing your body with calories and healthy foods, right? Nourishing foods that have macro and micronutrients that your body needs. This is the first step in breaking free. You can check out my macro calculator in the episode details. There's a link there to check your estimated macros and calories. But also please remember that having a professional do your calculation is going to be the most accurate and beneficial. Even my clients that are listening right now could go and do it and realize, hey, those aren't the numbers that I'm following and I'm getting awesome results. It's because I have the information on my clients that I need to build them a really specific plan. But that calculator is going to give you a really good guesstimate of where, you hopefully should be. And if there's a huge gap between what you're doing now and what that calculator says, then the plan that you're following is not going to work well for you in the long term. And here's the thing. I don't really hear people talking about this beginner trap. So hopefully this episode has been eye-opening for you. If you're new, or even if you've been around a while, definitely check out my new listener starter guide where I send you a quick video to watch so that you can understand macros, and then you get this whole starter guide and it can really just open your eyes as to, what the heck does a long-term sustainable plan look like? And you can see that link in the episode details. Because like I said, I was stuck in the beginner's trap for literally years. I kept going back to the same diet programs. I kept doing the same cardio dumbbell workouts, and I just kept going around and around and around and around in circles. If you want to create long-term change, you need to understand you cannot keep doing those same things you did in the beginning, even though you did get results in the beginning. It's just not how your body works. It's time to break free from this physical and mostly mental trap that so many of you are stuck in. I've done it, and I know you can too. All right, that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. You can always email me if you have any comments or questions about anything that we talked about on here, because I know we talk about things on here that it doesn't get talked about enough. And that's why I started this podcast, to break free from diet culture and help you do the same. So if you've been enjoying the podcast and if you tune in every week and you have not yet taken a moment to leave me a 5-star review, I would appreciate it so much. So many of you are coming back every week to listen, and there aren't a whole lot of ratings in my little Apple podcast thing. I think there's like, I don't know, 10 ratings maybe, if that. So if you are tuning in regularly and haven't taken a second to do that, I would appreciate it so much. And I think that's it for today. I'm so excited we finally talked about this because I feel like so many of you are going to have a breakthrough aha moment going, okay, I need to do things differently. If you are interested in my one-to-one coaching, just reach out via the link in the episode details, click the apply for coaching. It sends me a little email with all your information, and then I reach back out to you within 24 to 48 hours with next steps on meeting, just seeing if coaching is the right fit for you. And it's really a simple process. All right, thank you so much. Have the best week, and I will see you back here next week with a new episode. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode of the Feel Your Best Formula podcast. If you haven't already, make sure to check the episode details for my new listener starter guide, and any additional resources mentioned in the episode can also be found in the show notes on my website. You can always find me on Instagram at Macros with Lil, and for more healthy lifestyle tips, recipes, and information on my one-to-one and group coaching services, make sure to check out my website. All the links can be found below. If you know someone else who is ready to start building their formula for feeling their best, please share the love and send them a link to the podcast. I hope you found today's episode helpful, and I'll see you back here next week for a brand new one.